Good evening and welcome, everyone. We've had a very lively discussion already. Gene has brought his fan club to the meeting tonight, but I want to welcome you to the monthly meeting of the Anne Arundel Bird Club. My name is Chris Eberle. I am president of the Bird Club for another couple of months. I will, let's see, start with Sue and Alan. Do you want to give any kind of update on our field trips?
I could. I mean, we've had lots of field trips. You know, we're back. Field trips have been good. Since our last meeting, I'm not going to go a lot of details, but you know, we did our quiet waters with Pat Tate. Pat's here too, I think I saw him. And thank you for that, Pat. He had 32 species and 10 folks show up. Susie and I were over at Wooten's and we had, for the day, 51 species. We did Wooten's Landing and Sands Road, a lot of cool birds. It was just getting the end of the winter season and the start of the next season. So the transition, we thought was going well. Tim Carney took us all to Masonville Cove. And there's a new upper trail. And that upper trail takes you out to their dredge cell, which is really nice. We had a pretty windy day. Susie found us a redhead duck and we had a whole bunch of ducks. So the whole transition was going on well. But if you want to go into Baltimore and see shorebirds and birds that don't come to Baltimore and so on, Masonville Cove on the upper trail is really nice. You go out to the dredge cell just like we used to do at Swan Creek. And we've had long-billed dowitcher show up there right outside the city watching the stadium and so on. Just a cool place. Avocets, just a cool place. We did our kinder walk. We had 52 birds, but the coolest part was we saw lots of birds that were starting in their nesting season, and that was really, really fun. In fact, my highlight of the day was we had a nice little nest of a black vulture, and just this week I saw the little baby, so it's really cool to see a black baby vulture. I guess what else? El McGee did a walk for us over at Quiet Waters, as did Pat Tate. So we had two, because we have one a month at Quiet Waters and one a month at Kinder. And then we ended the season since our last time we met at North Track, and we had 10 folks come along there. 16 folks come along there.
10 cars.
10 cars, yeah. And we had a really nice day. So we're going to finish out the month of April. We're going to go to Conquest Preserve in Queen Anne's County tomorrow. And then in a week, we're going to do Upper Marlboro Ponds with Fred Schaefer, who's going to take us back to where he saw all his gulls that inspired him for his new book, The Gulls of North America. So everything was good. We have a lot of people showing up, but that's good enough. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, my copy of Fred Schaefer's book finally arrived. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make the trip, but that should be a good one. Are there any bird sightings of note that people want to report on? Things seem to have quieted down since a very active winter time. Lynn?
Hey, Chris, I just wanted to put on people's radar screen, those who live in the city of Annapolis or near Annapolis, there may be a common raven that's breeding somewhere in or near Annapolis. We've seen it from Jonas Green State Park or County Park across the river from the Naval Academy. Coming from the Naval Academy, flying across the river to the east. So, and we've seen it twice. We think twice. And then somebody else reported it at Greenberry Point. So keep your eyes open for breeding common ravens in Annapolis.
Interesting.
Atlas record.
Yeah.
We need it for the Atlas.
Whose block is that one? We'll figure it out. Great.
Marcia, are you going to mention our ravens the last few mornings?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Our wake up alarm in the mornings, the past few mornings, have been a pair of ravens that we hear outside our bedroom window. And we're not exactly sure where they're nesting, but hopefully they're nesting somewhere nearby. We see them soaring around the wetland that's behind our house, and then they usually disappear towards the south somewhere, but where they're going or where their nest might be, unknown at this point.
And then they show up again in the afternoon, so that they're definitely hanging out. We live in Bowie, and they're hanging out somewhere around here. So we're
Seems like-
keeping an eye on them.
Seems like ravens are becoming much more widespread in the Western Shore area. Any other good sightings? All right. Well, I think without further ado, Brad, did you want to do another introduction? The formal official introduction of Gene? And before we do that, though, I just want to remind people, looks like everybody is for the most part muted, but please mute your microphones so we don't get extraneous background noise during Gene's presentation. And with that, Brad, do you want to take it away, or?
Sure thing.
Okay, good, thanks.
I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. Many of us are veterans of the Towson State College University group. All of us are birders, and many of us are, if I got that right, the Anne Arundel Bird Club members. I have known Gene since the late 60s when we were together at Towson State College working on various biology degrees, and I got to know Gene later on through his work with the water department of Baltimore City, and taught me quite a lot because one of the classes I taught was ecology, and we did the water system. But without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody watching here tonight, if you don't know him already, Eugene the Scarpulla.
Okay, thank you, Brad. All right, Chris, you ready for me to share screen here?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, let's see what happens here. Share and okay, I think we're good. And if this works, I'll keep a laser pointer ready to use. Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm glad we had a good turnout of Anne Arundel Bird Club members, as well as Towson State College and Towson State University alumni, bio alumni. We were affectionately known as Bioenterprises back in those days. We were a motley group of biology majors working on either bachelor's or master's degrees. So anyway, I will talk about Shorebirds 101, an introductory overview. And I will mention that when I took ornithology at Towson, I think that it was either my junior or senior year, and I needed 4 credits to fill up, my schedule for that semester. And I thought, oh, ornithology. Geez, those people, that's like Anne Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies and Wally Cox, and they're going around with their pith helmets on and binoculars and in these khaki suits. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that, but I had to. I needed to take the credits. And I took ornithology with Compton Crook, which some of you had as Compton for your ornithology professor. And oh my God, I fell in love with birds. And seeing my first indigo bunting down in the glen at Towson was just, I'd never seen a bird that was so bright as an indigo bunting. And in the little marshy area, it was the first time I ever noticed a red-winged blackbird, and to see a black bird with these bright red epaulets. And I thought, this is really neat. So then I did 2 weeks of bird banding in the Glen with Doug Hackman, who is, I should say, the late Doug Hackman. But that was great too, just holding birds in my hand and doing bird banding. So that kind of is what got me started into birds. So with that, we'll go into shorebirds. So it will be impossible for me to teach everything about shorebirds in 1 hour. And it's also impossible for you to learn everything about shorebirds in 1 hour. Hopefully, what this presentation will do is that it will inspire you. Study your field guides and get out in the field and observe. That is the best way to learn shorebirds. What the talk is, I'm going to talk about basically the common shorebirds that we would see here in Maryland. Emphasis will be on the structure of them, the habitat that they occur in, where in Maryland they occur, what season. Are they migrants? Are they here in the winter? Are they breeders? And then we'll, of course, be separating the similar species. And then what the talk is not is about finding or identifying rarities. That's the whole different ballgame. That could be another separate talk. I will not have emphasis on different plumages except for a few species, where just to show you the differences in the plumage, but to show you that the structure of that particular species is the same, no matter what the plumage looks like. So what are shorebirds? They're in the order Charadriiformes, and primarily we have 4 families here in Maryland: the stilts and avocets, oyster catchers, plovers, and then the sandpipers. And there are tons of different types of sandpipers. So what are shorebirds? They inhabit shores and mudflats, grass flats. Generally, they are invertebrate feeders. They run, wade, walk, and some do swim. And the plumage varies throughout the year. And some of them have characteristic vocalizations that are easily identifiable. And I say this next statement: not everything at the shore is a shorebird, and not all shorebirds are at the shore. And the reason I say that, what are not shorebirds? And I have had people tell me these are shorebirds, but they are not shorebirds. Waterfowl are not shorebirds. Any of the seabirds, and of course, gulls are my favorite. They're my specialty, but they are not shorebirds. Any of the waders, the herons, egrets, ibises, and rails, coots, and gallinals are not shorebirds. So how did I get started? This all started at Bombay Hope National Wildlife Refuge around 1994, where I started going every Saturday from May through October, so that I could see the shorebirds when they were just coming into the refuge and seeing them in their breeding plumage. And then they would molt during the summertime. Well, of course, they'd go to their Arctic breeding grounds, but then on their way back, we'd catch them in different phases of molting into non-breeding plumage. And then you would also have the juveniles that would be coming down from the Arctic, and they would be stunning the way juvenile plumages look. And we'll mention that a little later on. And then where I learned more was Hart-Miller Island, a wonderful dredge material containment facility that I went almost every Saturday to look at shorebirds from May of '96 through December of 2008. So I spent a lot of Saturdays out there at Hart-Miller. And I'll mention one thing here with 2 of my mentors who will remain nameless at this point. But the first time I went out to Hart-Miller, I was out there, and I think, Hal, I think you might have been on that field trip. that I went on, and I was a novice to shorebirds. And it was people like Rick Blum and Michael O'Brien and Paul O'Brien, and they're identifying birds, things that are flying by that are half a mile away, or things that are a mile away out on the mudflats. And I'm there with, I had a brand new scope, and I had a flimsy tripod that I bought at Kmart. And the thing was just shaking in the wind. Every little breeze would shake it. But after that day, I said, boy, was I out of my element. I did not know anything about these birds that everyone was identifying. But then later on, many years later, then in '96, that's when I started going every weekend. And during that period, I was out there again, as I was saying, with two mentors. And the two of them were arguing over this bird. There were 3 birds, and they were probably about a mile away. And one of them was saying, oh, I think it's this and this. And the other ones are saying, oh, I think it's that. Now, I've been going there every weekend for a few years. So I'm looking, and I said, well, why aren't they red knots? And neither one of them said, eh. So eventually we got around to the other side of Hart-Miller Island, and there were 3 red knots sitting there. So I had learned by, again, putting in every weekend for year after year, learning about how to identify shorebirds. So what I'm going to cover here, we're going to talk about the structure of the birds, the behavior, what habitat they're in, and a little bit about plumage and age, whether they're adult or juvenile, and whether they're here only in the spring or only in the fall, so when they would be around. And usually you'll need more than one, well, I shouldn't say usually, but more than one field mark is sometimes necessary to make an ID. So with structure, we're going to look at size, body type and shape, the bill shape and length, head shape, leg length, primary extension, which is basically the edges of the wings, the tips of the wings, how far they extend, and either past the tail or past the tertials, which we'll get into later, and the posture, the general overall posture. With behavior, the posture can determine what behavior the bird is doing. Habitat, where they're hanging out, how they feed. Are they probers, probing in the mud? Are they picking from the surface of the water or picking from the mud? Do they scythe, which is kind of moving their bill back and forth in the water, trying to get anything? And you'll see this in particular with 2 species that will be coming up. And then calls and vocalizations. Some of these, like I said, are very, very identifiable. Plumage, and I have kind of everything lumped together here, looking at the color of the legs, the bills, the overall color, color of some specific feather groups. This is the topography, and then any obvious field marks. So plumage, and we will be seeing birds. This isn't just words. Adults in spring migration, you generally see them in April and May. And molting, you get them molting into breeding plumage and then in breeding plumage. And some of the breeding plumages can be very striking. And then the fall migration starts around mid-July through November. And actually it can start early July, but the bulk of it is mid-July into November. And you get worn adults that are now no longer in full breeding plumage, and they're moving into winter plumage. Then also the juveniles come out, and some will come at certain parts of the year, and we'll cover that with the specific species. And they can be very striking in their plumage, all brand new feathers that come in at the same time, and the feathers have bright feather edging to them. So don't be frightened by this. What we're going to talk about, the main things here. Tertials will be important when we talk about dowitchers. Primary projection is how long the tips of the wings extend. Are they out to here, or are they short like this? We'll look at the vents underneath the birds, flanks and breasts in here, and some other little things, but we'll mention this with each species. And then when birds are in flight, some of the important things are the rump. Does it have a white rump or not? And axillaries, we're going to talk about in here. When I talk about axillaries or armpits, this will be important when we're talking about plovers. And also wing bars, which some birds are have very prominent wing bars. So in flight, like I said, it's rump and undertail cover. It's the wing bars, the back, the tail, leg extension can be long on some birds, shorter on others, and the armpits, like I said, the axillaries. I'll mention the breeding bird atlas since we're in year, what is this, 3? Year 3. Or is this year 4? Geez, I'm getting confused. But anyway, we have 8 species that nest here in Maryland. And we have 2 that I have in red. Wilson's plover was a historical breeder, primarily in Assateague. And Wilson's snipe is a probable breeder in Maryland, but it has yet to be confirmed. And hopefully, maybe one of you will confirm these. The most likely spot where they are being seen and heard is in Garrett County. But there has not been a confirmation yet that they are breeding here in Maryland. So all of you can head out to Garrett County and see if one of you can confirm a Wilson snipe out there. And maybe I will even offer to give someone a shorebird book if they actually confirmed one out there. So let's go through the families real quick. Stilt and avocet family, Recurverostridae, which recurvero is bent back and rostrum is bill. So it's a bent back bill, and we have 2 Maryland species. These are unmistakable, blackneck stilt and American avocet. And I have a lot of details here about them, but I also have the very important things to look for that are highlighted in bold black with asterisks. So as you can see, the avocet is a little bit bigger than blackneck stilt, but the thing to look for a blackneck stilt, it's got a black neck, unless it's a female and it could be brownish, or if it's a juvenile, and they're basically all brownish for their upper parts. But that dark neck, and also very vocal, constantly yip, 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 yip. If you're ever around anywhere where they've got nests. And we did have the breeding for several years. I'm not sure at the moment, but they were breeding for several years out on Hart-Miller Island. And American avocet, similar, but notice in all plumages, either in breeding plumage or in non-breeding adults, they have that white wing patch. So if you see the white wing patch, it's an avocet, not a blackneck stilt. And if you see the black neck or a brown neck, it's the stilt. And males and females, males tend to have a straighter bill. Females are more of a recurved bill. All right, we got through one family. The second family, oyster catchers. Hematopodidae, which hemato is blood red, and podidae is foot. So blood red foot, we have one species here. Another unmistakable bird, American oyster catcher. And look at that large, bright red, orange, thick bill. And it's unmistakable on these birds. And the other thing is the bright red orbital ring around their eye. And this is very apparent that you would see that. They are Maryland breeders, primarily lower Eastern Shore. And they do actually feed on oysters. But again, if you want to see these, go to the lower Eastern Shore, mainly during the breeding season. All right, 2 families down. Third family, we're into lapwings and plovers, the Shorebirds, which Shorebird, it comes from plover, which originally came from the word gully, which supposedly was where they nested, in gullies. And primarily we have 5 Maryland species. The double breast bands, 1 species. Single breast band, we have 2 species. And then no breast bands, we have 2 species. And you can see the biggest ones are the ones with no breast bands and the killdeer. And we'll go through these separately. Killdeer is pretty much unmistakable with 2 breast bands, and they are very vocal, constantly calling killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. And if you're anywhere near their nest, they did this broken wing distraction display, like they want you to go after them because they've got a broken wing, to try and lead you away from the nest. These are common. They're found in all counties in Maryland, permanent residents. And the only thing you have to be careful for is the juvenile. Juvenile is this cute little downy puffy puffball thing here that only has 1 breast band. But as it grows up, it develops with two breast bands. And the single-banded plovers. And the most important characters, these are both about the same size, but the most important characters, semi-palmated has a brownish back and head. And the piping plover has a pale gray back and head. And look at the habitat where they occur. Primarily, you're going to find these on mud flats. And it's the same color as the back of the birds. And you're going to find these on sandy beaches. And it's the color of the sand. You can find semi-palmated plovers pretty much anywhere in Maryland, occurring in spring and fall migration. Of course, you're not going to get big numbers if you don't have the habitat, but spring and fall migrants primarily. And piping plovers, they are Maryland breeders down on Assateague Island. And you could see them in breeding season. Then the unbanded plovers, and I'll discuss them overall, and then we'll get into a little more detail. But basically, the black-bellied is chunkier. It's chunkier than the American golden plover, which is down below it here. They have a large rounded head as opposed to a smaller flattened head, large thick bill versus a very thin bill. And they have short primaries. They don't extend very far, whereas the primaries extend quite a ways here on the golden plover. And this is primarily a fall migrant. It's very, very rarely are they seen in the spring, though they do occur. And I should say everything I say is generally true, but birds have wings and they can occur wherever they want to occur and whenever they want to occur. So not everything is always as presented, because birds can do what they want. When they're in breeding plumage, the things to notice, the vent color is white on a black-bellied, but it is black for an American golden plover. There's a white crown versus the black crown on the golden plover, and primarily black and white is what you're seeing. It's all black and white coloration versus this golden coloration that kind of glistens in the sunlight on a breeding adult. Now, when they're not in breeding plumage, then again, you have to go by structure. Is it chunky? Does it have a large rounded head? Does it have a large bill? Is the neck thick? And does it have short primaries? If it doesn't, and instead it's slimmer and has a flatter head that's small, a smaller bill, slimmer neck, and longer primaries, then we're talking American golden plover. So you can see the structure is different on these birds. So even when they're not in breeding plumage, you can look at the structure here. And then in flight, the black armpits, no matter what plumage a black-bellied plover is in, they will have black armpits. So in flight, you can see that they do have a distinctive call, kind of a purr when they're in flight. But that armpit is a giveaway. Whereas in American golden plovers, they have pale armpits. And also I'll mention the white rump and this wing stripe. It's kind of a wide white wing stripe, which is very narrow on the golden plover. But the armpits and the rump patches are the big thing. Now the sandpiper family. This is where you get into a lot of stuff. The Scolopacidae, that word is basically woodcock, which came from long pointed stick. When you go back even further with where the etymology of the word came from. And we'll start with the large sandpipers. Godwits, whimbrels, upland sandpipers, willet, and the two yellowlegs. These are the biggest, and you'll see the godwits and the whimbrel are very big. Then you get down into willet and the yellowlegs. And you'll see the upland sandpipers are kind of in their own category. These two are unmistakable, Hudsonian godwits and marbled godwits. Very large size for both of them. But look at the bills. They are long and they are bicolored and slightly recurved, meaning curved up. The things that stands out on these, when depending on their plumage, Hudsonian godwits have gray backs, and in breeding plumage, they are reddish underneath. And one thing when I put this presentation together, I can really appreciate the work that photographers do to try and get photographs. It's impossible to have photographs of every character that you need for these. So people that actually can put together a field guide for shorebirds, it's amazing. I give photographers credit. Then I'll mention the wing linings. If this bird were to lift its wings, it would have black underneath, whereas this bird, if it lifted its wings, they're cinnamon colored. And the bird is very tawny colored for a marbled godwit. It doesn't have that gray coloration. It's a very tawny look to it. They are unmistakable when you see them. Another unmistakable bird is the whimbrel. They stand very erect. They're a large bird. You can see the legs on the left bird. The right bird, of course you can't, but he's standing in some tall grass. They have this very long decurved bill, very diagnostic when you see this bill. And also on their heads, they're striped. A migrant that passes through. So you potentially can see them spring and fall. And uppies, upland sandpipers, are another one that stands very erect. But the things to notice on an upland sandpiper, look at the neck, how long and thin it is. And in this photo. And they have a very small head. The head looks too small for the body. So with that small head and large dark eye, the eye looks too big for the small head. They generally occur on turf farms and farm fields primarily as a fall migrant, but they are a current breeder in Garrett County, and formerly they bred in other counties in Maryland, but they've been extirpated in these other counties as far as breeding. And then the other three long-legged waders, willet, and I will mention that there are two different types of willet. The ones that we have are breeding eastern willets that breed here in Maryland, and then a breeding plumage western willet. These occur out west. They do not breed here in Maryland, but we do see them during migration. They're a paler bird, and they don't have this dark chest and the dark coloration. Then greater yellowlegs and lesser yellowlegs, and we'll get into both of these. With eastern willets, they have that long, thick bill, and if you've ever been to the eastern shore, you will hear these things. They're in those coastal marshes. Again, dark brown, very dark brown in breeding plumage underneath. When they're non-breeding plumage, they're very gray looking. But the most diagnostic thing, look at the wing. black and white wing pattern stands out, and they are very vocal with their pill-will-will-it calls. Salt marshes, ocean beaches, tidal mudflats, sand flats, Eastern Shore, Lower Eastern Shore is a good place to find these. They are summer breeders, as I said, in the coastal marshes. And you also get them coming through in migration from various other locations. And just to kind of show you an example here, and again, you're not supposed to learn Western willets in this talk, but in general, Eastern willets are smaller in size. They have a shorter, thicker bill as opposed to a longer, thinner bill, shorter legs, and again, they are the summer breeder, whereas Westerns, primarily you will only see them during spring and fall migration. Now, greater yellowlegs and lesser yellowlegs. When they're standing side by side, they're easy. Look at the difference in size between these two birds. The size, the shape, the bills. The problem is when they're not both species in the same spot, then you've got to go by other characters. So let me go back one. Did I miss? No. Okay, we'll go here. 14 inches for the greater yellowlegs. They're a little bit stockier than a lesser yellowlegs, but the thing to look for is this long, usually bicolored. It shows up better here for their bicolored bill, and it's often slightly upturned. You'll see other slides of this. Find them in any basically wet areas, any types of marshes or mud flats. And again, primarily in migration. Greater yellowlegs come through earlier than lesser yellowlegs. Greater yellowlegs are one of the first migrants in April of shorebirds that are coming through. Lesser yellowlegs, it's about a 4-inch difference in size. They're smaller, and the bill is shorter, thinner, and straighter. They occur in the same habitats as greater yellowlegs, and again, primarily during migration is when you're going to see these. And again, non-breeders of the various species, they could be 1-year-olds that aren't breeding, they could stick around. You could potentially see birds at other times of the year. So when you compare the two of them, look at the size difference, about 4 inches. But on a single bird standing out there, it can be hard to tell. Stockier body versus slimmer body, the bill length, and the next slide, you'll see this bill length showed, as well as the slightly upturned bill versus a daintier bill, and the bill usually pale at the base versus bill all black. And here we see it. And we look at the bill to head ratio. Look at the length of the head here, or the head depth. It would come to about here on the bill. So this bill is about 1.5 times the head depth, whereas on a lesser legs, they're about equal. And again, the bill shorter, thinner, daintier. This one's longer, and it's slightly upturned here at the end. And it's not always easy to make this determination when they're in the field. So, but the way they feed can be quite diagnostic for greater yellowlegs. They are very active when they're feeding, and they're constantly darting around. They're very frenetic, like they're hopped up on something, just running around in the water in the marsh. Yellowlegs are not as active. They just kind of plod along doing their little thing, picking at things. And so that if you see this frenetic behavior, there's a good chance that that's a greater yellowlegs you're seeing. And when they're calling, and especially like if they're in flight, they can be calling as well as when they're feeding. But if it's calling 3 or more of these 2 notes, the toot, 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 greater yellowlegs. If it's only 1 or 2 notes, that's lesser yellowlegs. Now, the mid-sized sandpipers, and there's a lot of mid-sized ones, but we'll go through these, each group of that I have here. So the very inland sandpipers, Wilson snipe and American woodcock. They're similar, but They are different. They both have long bills. And the American woodcock, his long bill is prehensile at the end towards the tip, so that he's probing down in the soil for worms, which is their primary thing that they are feeding on. Wilson snipe feeds on a lot of invertebrates as well as just as worms, but lots of insects and things like that. But notice the heads, the striped head on a snipe versus a barred head on the woodcock. And their striped back is distinctly apparent in the field on a snipe. And they have barring on the sides, other flanks. These are buff colored on the sides and basically a buff colored bird. And look at the eye. It's very large and upset. It's very, or high set, I should say, up on the head. It's almost near the forehead. It's so high up on American woodcock. And Brad, you may remember me giving a graduate presentation for graduate seminar about the American woodcock, but don't talk about that yet. The shorter leg probers, and there's three to consider of these short leg probers: short-billed dowitchers, long-billed dowitchers, and stilt sandpipers. They all three feed in a sewing machine fashion when they're feeding. Short-bill has a long kinked bill, and you can see it kind of kinked down right here. Long-billed dowitcher has a long straight bill. Stilt sandpipers have a shorter decurved, it's curving down bill than the dowitchers do, and they have longer legs than dowitchers. And let me take a sip here. And I will discuss bill lengths when we get into the dowitchers here. Again, short-billed dowitchers, see how it's just slightly kinked towards the end here. Long-billed, it is very straight. And the stilt sandpiper, short and decurved. And I'll mention here that females are in most shorebirds, but not all shorebirds. The females are larger than the males. So in cases like that, you can have a female short-billed dowitcher that has a bill that is longer than a male long-billed dowitcher. So there's a little overlap area when the bills are kind of mid-sized on these. So how to tell the difference between stilt sandpipers and dowitchers. Now remember that dowitchers have longer legs, longer bill and shorter legs. And a stilt sandpiper has a shorter bill with longer legs. Why is that important? Because when they're feeding, the dowitcher with its short legs and long bill is bent over horizontally, and it's going up and down like a sewing machine. Whereas stilt sandpiper has these long legs and short bill, so it has to bend over farther when it's going up and down in this sewing machine positioning here. So if you see the birds are horizontal, you've got dowitchers, but if they're feeding this way going up and down, you've got stilt sandpipers. And then the shape of the back, which to me, I don't find this real helpful, but allegedly short-billed dowitchers have flat backs. Long bills have a more rounded back with the hump at the center of the back versus the hump at the shoulders. I don't find this always that simple to determine on dowitchers. And then the fall plumage on these juveniles. It's very, very striking. If you notice, this is juvenile shortbill here. The tertials, which are these feathers in here, they all have barring within the feathers and bright orange feather edging on all of the upper parts. So they look very scaly, very, very impressive looking when you see these. And you'll generally see these, the Bombay hook in August. You'll get a lot of these starting to move through. Long-billed dowitchers come a little bit later. They don't have barring in the tertials. They're just plain. And what they have is a dull red. It's very faint red that's on these grayish feathers on the edging. They come through later in the fall. And as you get later into the fall, the short bills will be gone. And the only ones you'll have left will be long-billed once you get into late November and into December. They should be long-billed dowitchers that you will find. And then we have 5 species that occur on the coast of these mid-sized. And they're all pretty distinctive as to when they occur and what they look like. So we go through them. Red knots, they're chunky, they got short legs, they got this tubular bill that's tapered. Now, notice on all 3, the breeding adult, the non-breeding, and the juvenile, the structure on these is all the same. The bill is tubular and tapered. They have fairly short legs, and they're kind of chunky bodied. And where you find them is where the horseshoe crabs are mating. So again, the Delaware Bayshore, New Jersey Bayshore, these are places to find red knots. And they are primarily a spring migrant. They're much easier to identify in spring when they're in breeding plumage like this. Miss Pillion Light in Delaware is a great spot to see these in the springtime, in May, generally towards the end of May. Ruddy turnstones are very distinctive. Chunky, again, short legs. Look at the bill, and you'll see the bill is the same. It's short but pointed in all 3 plumages. It's short and pointed. But the thing that also stands out on these is this upside down question mark. On breeding plumage, on non-breeding, and also on the juvenile. So you'll see this upside down question mark. You can find them on rock jetties. A good place is Ocean City Inlet. You can find them during migration as well as in wintertime. They'll be on Ocean City Inlet. Purple sandpipers, they are primarily here in the wintertime. So when you see them, they're going to be in non-breeding plumage. They look pretty much like this. This one's a little washed out, but they have orange legs, the fairly long, thin, slightly decurved bill that is pale orange. It's orangish at the base. And they occur on rock jetties. Ocean City Inlet, again, is a great time for looking for these in winter. And you'll see they kind of match the rocks on the jetty. Best time to look for them is on the winter trips. Dunlin, when they're in breeding plumage, I mean, they're dramatic the way they stand out with their black bellies. But they have long black bill, slightly decurved towards the tip. And again, if you look at breeding plumage, this is a different, if I remember correctly, 5 different races of Dunlin that look slightly different from each other. Not as much black on this one here, but again, look at the structure of the bill and the shape of the body, chunky, and that long black bill decurved. And then sanderlings. Generally, migration and winter, these are the ones, if you're on the ocean or anywhere where you've got waves coming in and out, you're going to see them running in and out with the surf. These juveniles and other birds can look very, very white and black in the winter time. The non-breeding ones aren't quite as white and black, but they're a lot of white. But the thing to look for also is that they always have this black at the bend of the wing. It's not as apparent here in breeding plumage. Well, I shouldn't say in breeding plumage, it's molting from breeding plumage. But they always have this black at the bend of the wing. It's very seldom you would see one of these in breeding plumage in our area because they don't reach full breeding plumage until they get to their Arctic breeding grounds. So we see them as they're passing north, as they're going into breeding plumage, and then we see them on their way south as they're coming out of breeding plumage. So it's occasionally you will see one that is pretty much in full breeding plumage, but not often. Then we have 4 other mid-sized. Spotted sandpiper. In breeding plumage, they are unmistakable. Spotted underneath. They're constantly bobbing their tail up and down as they're walking along and feeding. And when they fly, they have a distinctive wing beat that is they're very stiff. And you might get 2 wing beats, stiff wing beats, and then a little bit of a glide, 2 wing beats and a bit of a glide. But very, very distinctive. Breeding plumage, I mentioned the spots, but when they're not in breeding plumage, one thing to look for is this white patch that's in front of the bended wing. And you'll see that no matter what plumage they're in. And again, that's good for spotted sandpiper. Solitaries. Solitaries are really neat looking, I think. They have this bold white eye ring, no matter what the plumage. Juveniles, the adults are heavily striped. They have this long, thin, straight bill and olive green legs. They aren't quite yellow like a yellow legs. You will see them, they're smaller than the yellow legs and looks kind of similar, but they're smaller, and that white eye ring will give them away as solitary sandpipers. And then pectorals. These are very diagnostic. Just they are so heavily streaked in all their plumages, heavily streaked breasts on them, and this straight bicolored bill. Tapers down, pale at the base, darker towards the end. These are, again, another migrant. You can find them anywhere where there's water, as well as wet fields. And one of the other ones, these are kind of the different ones that stand out from the other ones. These buff-breasted sandpipers, they are very buffy colored, that we see them primarily in the fall. I should say primarily, as far as I know, only in the fall, but again, birds can do what they want to do. But the thing to look for the buffy coloration and look for that black eye, very prominent black eye in all plumages. But in the fall, these are great. They look like this. They're very, very impressive when they first show up. And then I'll say, don't call them peep, because I know people do call them peep. But white rump sandpipers and Baird sandpipers are not small like peep. They are bigger, distinctly bigger. So what stands out about these? White rumps have wings that extend beyond their tail, as do Baird sandpipers. But they also have a white rump, which you cannot see on the bird here, but in flight you will see that. Non-breeding, they're much grayer looking. And look for pinstriping. You can see this. They have it going down the sides of the flanks and on the breast. In breeding plumage, they also have a little bit of rufous on the crown, on the wings, and on the mantle, the area, the center of their back here. But anyway, much easier for an adult, for in breeding plumage than non-breeding, but they are different. They are bigger than the peeps that we will get to shortly. White rump looks very similar in size, does not have the white rump. The wings, you can see the wings here are extending beyond the tail. The tail ends right there. These primarily occur in the fall. Again, it's very infrequent that you would see one of these in the springtime. Primarily the juveniles are seen in the fall, and this white feather edging on their backs, again, gives them that scaly appearance. Fall migrations, good time. Bill Hubick got this photo of an adult in the springtime coming through. Brownish upper parts, no white feather edging, no scaly appearance, but they are very rare that you would have an adult coming through. And then the small sandpipers, the peep. These are the ones that tend to give, well, I should say these three, as well as Baird's and white rump, tend to give people the most problems. Three small peep. Okay, here's the overall general differences. Least sandpiper has a tapered, pointed bill that slightly decurved down and yellow legs, whereas the other two have black legs. Now, this is only good if you can see the yellow legs and they aren't covered in mud. If they're covered in mud, forget it, because then they got black legs. But they are brown. In all plumages, they're a darker brown than you're going to see in the other two species. They're slightly smaller, but they're much browner. Semi-palmated, you're going to see they're the grayish of the three with their plumage. Again, black legs, but their bill is short, straight, and tubular, and kind of blunt at the end. Western has a long, tapered, slightly decurved bill that often looks like it's drooped towards the end, again, with black legs. And during breeding plumage, they can have these bright chestnut on top of the head, in the auriculars, the ear area, as well as on the wings. You can have this bright chestnut highlighting. And then how to tell these apart. All right, least sandpiper, again, look for the bill. It's tapered, pointed, slightly decurved, and it's the same whether it's in breeding plumage, non-breeding, or a juvenile. Yellow legs, if you can see the legs. And it's, like I said, it's always the darkest brown. And generally, you will find these feeding more on the mud that's surrounding the water rather than in the water. You'll see the other two usually in the water. These generally are a little higher up out of the water. Again, in general. Semi-palmateds, again, look at the structure for the bill. It's short, generally, tubular and blunt tipped. And I'll mention these eastern population of the semi-palmated sandpipers tend to have longer bills. And I'll say especially the females, because you can have semi-palmated sandpipers, females with long bills that can be a little bit longer than a Western sandpiper, which generally has the longer bill. But it's one of these things where, again, the female has the longer bills, and it can be longer than the male Western sandpiper's bill. And again, these are the grayish of those three sandpipers. And then Westerns, look at the bills. They're long, they're a bit decurved, and they tend to droop a little at the end down here. They have that bright chestnut when they're in breeding plumage. And you're thinking, okay, well, can I really tell the difference between a semi-palmated and a Western? So here they are side by side. Side by side, you can see the difference. Look at the bill shapes, longer in a Western, shorter and blunter in, what do I have there? I've got some, okay, never mind. Usually the longer bill, slightly larger bill, bigger head, thicker neck, and chunkier body. And you will see this in all three of the photos. And then when Westerns are in breeding plumage, they'll be much more colorful. And you'll see the streaking that I mentioned on the flanks and on the breasts, sides of the breasts here. So of course, these, this, and this are the Westerns. And another thing that I look at with Westerns, the semi-palmated, the bill kind of comes in and then a forehead goes up and around. And the bill kind of ends straight. Whereas on Western, it kind of tapers more the way the bill ends, a little farther up on the forehead. So it almost looked like the bill, instead of sticking out from the bird's head, it almost blends in with the shape of the forehead on Western sandpipers. Okay, our last group, the spinning swimmers, the three phalaropes. I threw them in. None are really that common that you will see them, but we'll cover these. Inland, Wilson's is the one that generally you would find of the three inland. The other two tend to be more pelagic. They're usually observed while floating, although they can be walking around on mudflats, and they feed while floating, often spinning in circles. Females are brighter colored than males. And the interesting thing, they are polyandrous, where there's female-male role reversal. The females are the brighter colored. They mate with the males, lay their eggs, and then the male incubates the eggs while the female goes off and mates with somebody else. She lays another clutch of eggs, another clutch of eggs. That male then raises that clutch. So it's all left up to the male to hatch these eggs. And occasionally they're seen during migration or on winter pelagic trips in general. And this is for all three species. And just a quick look here, what a breeding female looks like in Wilson's phalarope. Again, the only female that's regularly seen, but look at the shape of the bill. And this bird's kind of has its head towards us, so you can't see it as well. But bills are very long, thin, black bills. In non-breeding plumage, they're just very pale gray. So you may be lucky enough to see these in the springtime like that, but you're also often just see them like this in non-breeding plumage. Rednecks, these are beautiful birds. If you get to see them in breeding plumage, generally you're going to be out on a pelagic trip or you're up in their Arctic breeding grounds. Things to look at for redneck phalaropes, they have striped backs, whether they're in breeding or non-breeding plumage. And this is good if you have a mixed flock out on a pelagic trip. Look for these striped backs. Those are rednecks, as opposed to the next one. And again, you're not going to generally see these in bright breeding plumage unless you're up north on their breeding grounds. Red phalaropes, the bills are very different. They're short and thick in breeding plumage, again in the Arctic. They're this bright yellow color, but generally it's a short black bill that we'd see down here. And in non-breeding plumage, if you were to see these out on the water, again on a pelagic trip, these have pale backs. They do not have stripes on their back the way a red-necked phalarope would have on a pelagic trip. So with that, I'll mention, look for these 8 species that are definite breeders in Maryland and look for the one that is probably a breeder. And I would love for Wilson snipe to get confirmed in Maryland during this atlas. But they do tend to be a little hard to find to confirm. I'll mention some references. If you're not heavy into shorebirds yet and you just want to do a little delving into it, 2 field guides I recommend. I grew up on the National Geo Guide. I guess I started with the 1st or 2nd edition, and they're now up to the 7th edition. But my good friend Rick Blum started me with that. He was one of the co-editors with John Dunn on the 1st and 2nd editions, and really good illustrations in there for shorebirds showing different plumages. The Sibley guide is also good, but like I said, I grew up with the Geo guide. But both of these, either one is good. Then if you want to get more into shorebirds, the two that I learned on, let me move that out of the way. There were only two available when I started looking at shorebirds. Shorebirds and the Identification Guide on the left. And then a little bit later, Dennis Paulson put out Shorebirds of the Pacific Northwest, which I thought really wouldn't be that good for me in Maryland. But as it turns out, Pacific Northwest, that is a great book and has wonderful illustrations showing the differences between separating species of shorebirds. Lots of illustrations. So I loved both of these books, especially Paulson's. And then three more have come along since then. Shorebirds of North America, the Photographic Guide, Shorebirds of North America, Europe, and Asia. And then we have Michael O'Brien's book, The Shorebird Guide. All three of these are good books. If you want to try one, of course, Michael's is the newest. If you really get heavy into it, like somebody I know, like me, that has all five of the books, put them on your Christmas list, if these are even still in print. So photo acknowledgements. I have to acknowledge Bill Hubick and Jim Stass, who I used, I'd say 95% of the photographs in here are from these two excellent birders and wonderful photographers. And I thank them for allowing me to use them. Supplementary photos I got from Shorebird ID Challenges and Identification Workshop that was put together by MOS back in 2007. And it was a presentation by Cindy Loper, I'm not sure how she pronounces that, John Bierke, and Michael Bowen. And some of the photographers who had contributed photos for that workshop, I've listed here. I had to borrow some of their photos as well. Special acknowledgement to my wife, Marcia Watson, for twisting my arm to create this presentation. That's us up at Conowingo, which probably 30 years or more ago, not this photo. This is a recent photo taken by Beth, who's on the talk today. But Marcia and I first met at Conowingo, I don't know, 30, 35 years ago or so. It's been a while. So with that, hopefully the presentation has left you with insight into identifying shorebirds and has not left your mind spinning and swimming like a phalo rope. And with that, I will stop sharing screen and answer any questions that anyone might have.
Jean, I just want to say that we came to your talk when you did it for PG last year,
Yes.
and this was even better. This was so awesome.
Yeah, I did some fine tuning of it this week.
No fine tuning, miraculous and awesome. You just keep taking us there. You just keep teaching us. That's all. Thank you.
I agree. It was very good, and I learned more when I listened.
That's right, Bobby. I think you were taking notes the first when I gave it to the PG.
I have them here, and I'm writing in red on top of the black.
Okay.
Great job, Scarp. I got a little thing here, since you may have met the guy. I think Giff Beaton is a former student of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I taught him at Towson High School, if it's him, but I remember meeting him years later. He'd gone from the skinny little 5'4" kid to 6 foot something, and he was a pilot.
Mhm.
And I just looked up the Giff Beaton who did your Western, plover or stilt shot for, I'm sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
he's a Delta pilot, and he's published many nature books. I'm wondering if it may have been the same kid. I'll shut up now.
If I may contribute to that, I got to know Giff Beaton quite well down here in Annapolis. When after he left Baltimore, he became a midshipman, and he called our house one day and said, I've got a funny looking duck along the seawall here at the Naval Academy. It turned out to be a harlequin duck, and we had a nice long chat, and I've since seen him here and there along the way. He has come, Gene, on some of our old pelagic trips.
Mhm.
And now he lives in Atlanta and is the author of the best book on the birds of Georgia. And he's retired as a pilot and has all kinds of time for birding. So
Yeah,
it's a good guy.
I do think it's the same kid. Well, I say kid. He's retired. I remember this kid was just nutso over birds when I taught him, and knowledgeable. I mean, you would see a bird in the field, he would go, "That's a ramalama ding dong," and it's on page 273. I mean, he knew what page the bird was on in the book.
Huh. Well, I never knew that that GIF was from Towson. That's interesting.
I think, I'm not going to say 100%.
That's
Because
probably him.
I'm getting old and dingy. And for those of you who don't know it, two things happen to you when you get older. One is you lose your memory, and I can never remember the other one.
Okay.
That's a good one.
Some of us are still working on that. The slow ones.
So
Nicely done, Scarp. When's your next show?
I was telling Marcia, I said, you know, if I could give up Maryland bird life, then I could put together Gulls 101 and a few other little things like that. And
Oh, by the way, I would like to just put in a plug for myself. I'm publishing a book called Hummingbirds East of the Mississippi. It's one page.
one bird. Okay, Brad.
I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
Well, that should be a nice short book. Nice idea, though. Nobody else has done it.
Gene, the other thing I want to ask you is about the phalaropes.
Mhm.
Like, where can you go to see them? Are they just a happenstance kind of?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. You kind of have to luck into them. I remember Rick Blum telling me, and I don't know Hal and Lynn, if you were there, but there was one day out on Hart-Miller where they had all three species
Whoa.
out there, and they were all in the same scope field.
I do remember that.
Yep.
Wow.
I mean, that's unheard of for something like that. But yeah, you just have to, like I said, as many times as I went to Bombay Hook and Hart-Miller, it's just, you luck into them.
And still, Gene,
Unless you go on a
I'm very
pelagic trip.
I'm sorry.
I was saying, unless you go on a pelagic trip, you know, a nice fall or winter pelagic trip, there's a good chance you're going to find phalaropes out there, redneck and red.
So Gene, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. I was hoping you would do a presentation about going out on pelagic tours. We tried to get Fred from the Eastern Shore to do one for us, and he said, ask you to do it.
Nothing like putting one.
I actually did a presentation on pelagic birds. Wow, that was probably around 1990 or 91, using Kodachrome slides that I borrowed from Michael O'Brien. And so, of course, I have nothing left of that because Michael has all his slides back. But it's been so long since I've been on a pelagic trip. It's been forever. So I'm definitely out of practice on pelagics. But who knows? Maybe we could start Atlantic seabirds up again and start going out of pelagic trips out of Ocean City.
Yeah, Hal, you're smiling there. Can you do a pelagic presentation?
Well, I'm a little bit in the same boat as Gene. I counted up a couple of years ago, I've been on 148 pelagic trips, plus or minus a couple on both coasts. But all I have is Kodachrome slides. And
Yeah,
I don't know how I could put together a program in these modern digital times.
Well, maybe Lynn can help you put that together because, you know, that's a whole new world out there. I have to say, I went on my first and last pelagic trip last summer. I got deathly ill. But it's a whole world out there that I think we all need to do. And I'm willing to do it again, but I need help with it.
Al, today when I was online searching for something, and you know how ads pop up. An ad popped up for a slide converter, a little gizmo about this big that you plug into your computer and it converts your slides to digital format. $85.
I'll pay.
We'll pay.
We'll pay.
We'll pay,
I
we'll pay
have one of
now.
those.
So what
I
do you
have
do with?
one of those that you can borrow.
Who said that?
How much
Linda.
time does it take to
Linda
convert
Vitchak, I
10,000
have one.
slides?
Oh, Linda, you've got one?
Yes, I do.
Okay, okay, so
It
Linda's
works
gonna
very
give that to
well.
you, Val.
Just stick
So
those
if this does them
slides
one
in.
by one, I have approximately 8,500 slides.
Okay, it sounds like a winner.
It's very-
Maybe there could be a
There's a-
selection process or prioritization.
There's a company
you
called
doing, Hal?
iMemories. Company called iMemories, where if you contact them, it's imemories.com, just one letter, memories, and their business is converting film, slides, Kodachrome, Ektachrome, 8mm to digital on a disc. All right, and I know this because we did like 9 years of 8mm of our son growing up, who just called on the phone. So I'm going to have to say goodbye and thank you all very much, because we're trying to put together a trip to Pennsylvania to see him get his PhD diploma for the second time.
Oh,
This was
congratulations.
really,
All right.
Yes.
this was really great, Travis. Travis, that's my son's name. Gene and gang, this was wonderful. Thanks for letting me take part in this. And next time you got something happening, please let me know. This was great.
Yeah,
Nice
maybe,
meeting a lot of you all, folks. You all take care.
Glad you could
And
be here, Brad.
thanks for having me. I gotta
okay,
go.
Brad.
Bye now.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Regarding turning slides into CD discs, Walmart does that too. But once they put it on disc, you still have to edit it, because you give them a box full of slides and they have a monkey handing them the slides, so they go on the disc in very random order. But Walmart will do it for you.
Seems like one way to do this might be to find somebody who's given many pelagic talks and ask him if you could borrow it. And if he won't come with it, then I could do the talking. But
If we could find such a person, that's an awesome thing. But the next time, for me, this is going to sound silly. For me, all of my pelagic birds, and I have a lot of them, I saw at the end of Cape Cod, looking out from the land, and never mind, it's just silly.
it's a good place to do it. I've been at Provincetown also looking offshore and seen a few things the time that I remember. The
Oh, well,
West Coast is a great place to do that.
A closer
places.
place.
Oh, we had this with the South Americans, or it was some kind of a crazy
Skua.
skua.
Yeah, we had the skua.
And we got a picture of it and everything, and everybody.
We didn't
says,
know what
"Oh,
it-
you
we didn't know
found
what it was."
We didn't know what it was. We
At
didn't-
Cape Cod, down on Race Point, and we got this bird, and they said, "Oh my gosh, you got this skua that never comes inland." We got it. It was like, that was wonderful. Yeah, great. But it would have been so much greater if we would have known what it was, if we could have appreciated it. So Hal, I'm going to be bugging you about this for a while.
Be gentle.
I'll be very gentle,
Of course, you'll be gentle.
very gentle, but I feel
We'll
like.
see. We'll have to get Gene in on this too, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
of
think we're on,
course.
I think we're on to something.
I think we
here.
got to play it. It's coming up. It's coming to be. a
And
plan.
since we're the field trip people, we could plan a pelagic for AABC. And I'll get one of those patches or something so I can go.
Mhm.
So a place to go watch from land that's not too far away is the Avalon, New Jersey Sea Watch. It's just a little bit north of Cape May.
Oh, yeah, we've been
And-
there.
We've been there. We've
Yeah,
been there.
they staff the Sea Watch from September through December,
Yep.
and, you know,
We've
90,000
sat there
seabirds.
too many hours,
Oh,
but it's
yeah,
been
we've-
really fun.
Yeah, we've been
Yeah.
out.
I like to pull up with my car and lawn chair and a mug of hot chocolate and
Yep, yep.
sit
And
there all day.
those guys are such experts out there. It's really a fun thing to do.
I've seen skua there, right,
Hmm.
right offshore.
Yep, awesome.
I like the idea of having a pelagic trip though.
Yeah, I think that
So-
would be a really fun thing. So,
That'd be
I
great.
think we know how to set that up. I think we need to, I think everybody kind of needs to have a lesson on it before we go out there.
Mhm.
What were those fun things that like dance on the water?
Wilson,
Storm petrel.
Storm
Oh, yeah, those
Petrels,
storm
yeah.
petrels.
And they were dancing so much. Sue wanted to dance, but she couldn't. It
I was
just
dancing, but I was-
gonna have
I
to
was
say.
literally praying to die and I almost jumped off the ship.
Mm.
Speaking of pelagic trips, I guess I want to tell you one brief story about a friend of most of ours who passed away recently that in a very weird way, I thought was just unbelievably funny. Talking about our buddy Bob Ringler.
I was thinking that's who you were saying.
Were you?
I
Is that
was.
Beth?
Yes.
Hi, Beth. How are you? Haven't seen you for
Good.
quite a while, but anyhow, Bob loved to go on pelagic trips, but he got deathly seasick every time. And I remember one time he got up in the motel the morning before the trip, and as we were loading up, he turned around and went back to the motel and said, "I just can't do it." But then there was one winter trip, Gene was probably on this or orchestrated it. And he had on his mind fulmars, which he had never seen in Maryland. And we went well offshore and eventually got into a nice flock of fulmars flying all around the boat. And Bob was in the cabin deathly sick. And he was lying there. And I went in there and I shook him and I spoke to him, "Bob, there's fulmars all around. All you got to do is sit up and look out the window." He said, "Oh, get away from me." And he flopped back down and he never would get up. So be careful what you ask for. Pelagic trips are are an interesting experience.
I know how Bob felt, with as many, I hadn't, of course, been on as many as you've been on, but with ones that I've been on, I went on one with Ron Naveen and David Lee out of North Carolina. And it was one of these things where it turns out that if I put on a scopolamine patch, which is what I used to use, within a half an hour, I get deathly ill. So I got ill the night before having this scopolamine patch on, and I took it off. So I went out on the boat without a patch, with nothing, and said, "Okay, I'll just take my chances." Well, that didn't work real well. And it was one of these things where I got deathly ill. And we were going out to see black-capped petrels. And I had been so sick. I had gone in the cabin and just laying down. And it's, "Okay, there's black-capped petrels. Come on." Oh, I don't want to get up. But I think I did manage to get up and take one look and see a black-capped petrel and then collapse again back down. But yeah, that happens.
Such fun. Speaking of Towson, by the way, David Lee used to be a professor at Towson and organized a hawk watch on the roof of one of the buildings at Towson.
Yep.
Before he moved to North
One
Carolina.
of my favorites, guys, is they said, "Take your pride out on the side of the ship."
Yeah,
Preferably in the stern.
Yeah,
yeah.
or somewhere other than here, right? Yeah,
Well, Gene, I can't thank you enough for doing this for us tonight. This
I
was
can't
so
either.
awesome.
Oh my gosh.
And I am determined that I'm going to head to Delaware once a week. I'm doing it.
Bombay Hook
It's worth
And-
it, yes.
at Al,
That's how you learn them.
Mhm.
Oh, and now that we've got, well, Dean, this is all recorded, right? Who was
Yeah.
recording it?
Yeah, it's gonna,
Yeah, Chris, you were. So I was thinking about that because, I mean, I was just concentrating on the whole thing because I never did get really good at shorebirds. But I was thinking it would be nice to go on a trip, like look at your slides again, your whole show again, go on the trip, like while it's all fresh in your mind. And then like just before I went on any shore trip, I'd look at it again so that I could try to remember everything before I got there.
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
I loved it. It was really, really good.
or better yet, Jean, do you want to, oh, you're leading a trip. It's not until August though, right?
Right.
mhm.
Yeah, I've got to get there for the Red Knots though in May.
Jane and Fred Fallon are leading a trip on May 29th for the Red Knots.
Okay, great.
We
Um,
love them. We love
It's
them.
Memorial Day
We try
weekend.
to see them every year. I just want to say this is for what it's worth. Dave Mazurkowitz, I'm out there and I'm telling Dave, I can't get these things. He says, look, Alan, stop. You're never going to learn these things unless you go there every day for a couple of weeks. And we tried to do that. And guess what? We started actually recognizing them. You know, I just got to keep doing it. That's all.
And I like to take a lawn chair and just set in one place, set up my scope, and just stay there for hours. Because you learn a lot watching the birds come in and out, you know?
Their behavior.
Yeah. As the populations change during
Yeah.
the day, you just pick up a lot.
With shorebirds, I think behavior might be one of the most important things, especially when you're looking at them from far away.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is great. So
Jean, this was
thank you, everybody. This was great.
really good, very timely. And yeah, I think all of us learned a lot, no matter how much we knew beforehand. So thank you.
It's a
Thank
lot
you.
a lot to learn.
Well, I also appreciated you starting off by saying you can't teach it all in an hour, and there's no way we're going to learn it all in an hour.
No.
So that was good. But yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone attending tonight. I will get the recording posted hopefully by tomorrow and send that information out. So Jean, I'll rely on you to send it out to all your Towson crew. So they have a copy of that recording as well. So we are. Mhm.
I'm the hub for about close to 30 bio alumni that have stuck together over the years. And
That's
I'm the one
great.
that kind of pulls everyone together for different events.
That's great.
From the beginning of the bio enterprises, you were always our hub.
A hub. Okay.
All right. Well, once again, thank you, Jean. Thanks everyone for being here. Glad everyone could attend this, and yeah, thank you. Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful presentation. So next month we will have a talk by Jacob Marlin with the Belize Foundation for Research and Environmental Education at our May meeting. So hope to see some of you or most of you there at that.
Hey,
All right.
Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, if you can send me a short blurb on that, like
Mhm.
in the next 24 hours, I'm putting together the Patuxent Bird Club newsletter right now,
Okay.
and I'm on a real short timeline because I want to send it out to the club before I leave for Panama next week. So it's
I'll do
going out
that.
a little, yeah, it's going out a little earlier than usual. But yeah,
Oh.
I saved a space.
Okay.
I was going to ask you about that, so that would
All
be
right.
great.
Yeah, I'll send something out to you this evening.
Thank you.
All righty.
Panama. Wow.
Panama MOS trip.
Wow.
It was supposed to go originally in 2020, and of course that got canceled. So we're trying again, but we're staying at the Canopy Tower and the Canopy Lodge. And it's Rick Blum who made me want to go there.
Mhm.
He, when they first opened the Canopy Tower as a lodge, a birding lodge, they invited a bunch of ornithological type journalists, writers, to come for free and then write about the place. And Rick was in that first group that went.
Very
And
cool.
he wrote about it for Birdwatchers Digest, but the last conversation I had with Rick before he passed away, we were sitting at a picnic bench in Havre de Grace looking at shorebirds, and he was telling me about that trip. and it just made me want to go. It's been on my bucket list ever since.
It's a great place. I've been,
Well,
yeah, I've
have
been to there.
fun.
Yeah,
We'll enjoy that. Yeah. And I'll get this sent out to you.
thank you.
All right. Happy spring,
Okay.
everyone.
Same to you,
Happy
Chris.
spring.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Happy
Bye.
Appleseeing,
Great to
everybody.
see you,
Bye-bye.
Beth.